American economists just revealed that the U.S. needs 10 million new homes. The U.S. housing crisis isn't just bad luck. It can now be called extreme. It's the direct result of specific policies in specific cities with predictable outcomes. And here's the crazy part. We already know these policies don't work because we keep running the same experiment over and over again. Politicians do this because the actions seem like a logical reaction that should help if we're able to run society in a vacuum where we can moderate all possible outcomes. Before we break this down, if you want data-driven breakdowns on housing, policy, and real estate, hit like and subscribe. Because this one is going to challenge what you think you know. Rent control. The St. Paul experiment. In 2021, St. Paul, Minnesota passed one of the strictest rent control laws in the country. Rent increases capped at 3% per year, and it applied broadly across most housing. Sounds good, right? Control price, rents don't get out of control for the target market. Rent control was going to finally stick it to the greedy landlords. But that isn't what happened. Instead, building permits dropped 79% in 1 year. Right across the river in St. Paul's Twin City, Minneapolis, which didn't add a rent control law, saw its housing construction quadruple. In the short run, St. Paul saw development cease. Investors who had been working in St. Paul disappeared. Landlords with existing properties raised rents sharply and considerably before the law went into effect, so they could compensate for subsequent years of no increases. In the long run, less housing supply exists, so rent prices will be more expensive for a longer time period. Rents will be higher overall. Supply and demand is undefeated. The rentable units that remain will age. Because there is no incentive for upkeep, rentals will remain in poor and substandard condition. The bottom line, price controls don't fix shortages. They make them worse. It doesn't make rent more affordable, it eliminates investment and kills incentive. Zoning, the invisible shortage machine. Across the U.S., most cities enforce single-family zoning, height restrictions, parking minimums, lengthy permitting. This isn't one law, it's thousands of local rules. But the result is the same: housing shortage. 10 million or so. The White House Council of Economic Advisors estimates the U.S. needs 10 million homes to meet population needs. Yet we have the world's worst Sunday of laws that will seriously impede action on this. In the near term, we have projects delayed for years. In Omaha, a streetcar line that was scheduled for completion for 2026 won't be complete for another 2 to 4 years. Delays lead to costs skyrocketing before construction even begins, which means smaller investors and developers get pushed out. Over the coming years, this leads to a chronic housing shortage and housing prices that continue to rise year after year. As prices get unruly, middle-class buyers give up on trying to afford a home. We talked about Austin, Texas last week. Austin loosened its zoning and built aggressively. So rents in Austin have actually declined recently. The city is oversupplied, meaning demand is lower than supply. Prices always fall. Same country, same economy, different policy. NYC's 99-unit loophole. In 2024, New York City passed a tax incentive law called 488X. Here's how it works. If your building has fewer than 100 units, you get a tax break. If it has 100 plus units, then the owners have higher wage mandates and affordable housing requirements kick in. So what did developers do? They didn't build fewer apartments. They built buildings with exactly 99 units. In 2025, builders tripled the number of 99-unit buildings in the city. Developers split up projects intended to be a single extra-large apartment building and made it into multiple 99-unit buildings, connecting them physically to function as one. In the short term, the surge made oddly sized buildings, which contributed to design inefficiency. All because government created an incentive for one size and a disincentive for the larger. Over the long term, fewer total units were built, which means higher unit costs. This is what economists call regulatory arbitrage. a process by which companies and investors look for loopholes and end around to the rules in place. The rules create incentives that are unintended. Policy uncertainty. Why builders walk away? In cities like New York and Washington, D.C., or Los Angeles, California housing policy is constantly changing. The rent rules shift, tax incentives appear and disappear, and new mandates get layered on. When these things happen, investors immediately get spooked. Projects get delayed or canceled. Banks get nervous and financing becomes harder. Because the risk is higher, investors demand higher returns, raising costs. In the long run, this means fewer housing starts, reduced competition, and higher rents and home prices. Lower competition always means higher prices. Here's the reality. Investors don't build when they can't define the costs and the returns. The big picture. Look at the pattern. The policy of rent control was intended to lower rent costs. The result was higher rents in the long term. Zoning restrictions were intended to create neighborhood stability. Instead, it created a 10 million home shortage across the United States. Tax incentives led to gaming the system because it incentivized the behavior. Finally, regulatory changes meant to protect tenants means uncertainty for investors and less development. When government gets involved, the solutions they offer tend to be simplistic and create other problems. Policies consistently reduce supply, while demand keeps rising. The U.S. didn't just come to an epiphany that they needed 10 million houses to meet demand. We created the problem. When we ask government to fix what we might think is a broken marquee, it ends up restricting supply and raising prices, creating distorted incentives or punishing new construction. And until that changes, housing will stay expensive, no matter how many so-called solutions get proposed. If you want more breakdowns like this, where we take policy, strip out the politics, and look at what actually works, like and subscribe. Maybe even send me a comment and check out my other videos.